So the perennial question of connecting with Gen Z consumers in the digital age and how to drive loyalty and retention. We're just having a chit chat outside, and I got some headline stuff from my speakers right there out there. And when you mentioned that consumers don't keep the brands, consumers are not on their toes; they're on their thumbs now, right? That's so true. So I want to start, we have spoken about physical retail, how we are going to digital, and how the experiential part of it is intact, But when it comes to Gen Z, who are digital natives, they understand it better than maybe, some of us here. They behave very differently when they shop, and brands also have understood how to get their pulse and address them. So, for example, they are very sensitive about sustainability. They're very sensitive about not only the product, but the story behind the product. So it's a complex way of, addressing them. Pankaj, starting with you, what is your experience of how does Gen Z shop?
I think if I were to kind of just boil it down to a few things, I think they're very restless. The attention span that they have is very less. Of course, if you're an aged brand which has been there for some time, it's a lot easier for you because there is a legacy that comes along with it. But if you're a new brand and you want to catch attention, that you really have to try much harder. I think that's probably the crux of things. But then I think one very interesting thing about the latest trend that we are seeing is that even though we keep calling them digitally native, I think the way they consume stories is very native, but the way they consume and they buy the product is still, it's a blend, it's a mix. So how the brand is able to kind of, have that whole experience done in a more streamlined way, I think that's the other challenge that one needs to address.
Anshita, how do you see the Gen Z's behavior? How do they shop? I mean, are they easier to catch than maybe the other generations?
I feel like they're not easier to catch because Gen Z is always on the run. And I know that because I am Gen Z, so I shop like Gen Z. And it's hard to pinpoint them, but you can in one way, and I think I see that consistently, is emotion. As long as the emotion behind the product or why you're selling it or who you're selling it to is very consistent, you're more likely to catch them in that moment. Because if you can make them feel that emotion, let's say it's happiness, let's say it's sadness, you're connecting to the consumer in a way that's a little far away from, this is the product quality, these are our USPs. No. Today, they want emotion. It'll keep them sticky. And honestly, yes, they are on their thumbs, they're on their phones, and their attention span is 5 seconds. So if in those 5 seconds you make them feel something that makes them remember the product, you've gone a much longer way than other brands today.
5 seconds.
That's all Amazing. You have.
Funny, so your question is a little different because it's about enabling the ecosystem. For example, when I order from Blinkit, I expect 8 minutes to be 8 minutes, or it goes to 10 minutes, I'm all cool. But is Gen Z impatient when you see, from a delivery side, How do you map the behavior of, Gen Z when it comes to the delivery side? How are they reacting to it?
Sure. So it's very interesting. Anshita just mentioned that they have 5 seconds. Back in my days, I'm a millennial. So I would say that it was 15 seconds. We had this phrase, 15 seconds of fame. So it has reduced. And one of the main factors that we have seen, Gen Zs adopt as compared to, let's say, their other generational counterparts is that they grew up with the technology. So it's more of a learning
Born
curve.
in the thick of technology.
Yes, born in the thick of technology. Their adoption, they know in and out. They know how to leverage technology for their own needs and requirements. And coming to the expectation versus what has been said, they are very finicky that way. Yes, they need the goods delivered immediately. And which is where, Porter has seen an amazing, tremendous growth in the last couple of years because it has been largely fueled by these last moment on-demand requirements. So if, let's say, companies are not able to give that, they get it themselves. So that is the biggest understanding, that is the biggest realization, at least we as a group have been able to get to so far.
Right. Mike, your initial comments on how do you see Gen Z's behavior?
So I think, while Gen Z is obviously a new generation, but I think every generation is looking for a story. So, what we have realized as a brand is that, what is most important especially for Gen Z is the story behind the brand. So we are selling a product, but what is the story behind the product? So I think that has helped us to connect with the Gen Z customer.
All right. So a lot of consensus here. Pankaj, people say the sustainability. Okay, there was an earlier panel where a profound line, which is not leaving my head, is there. That brands, Gen Zs don't see legendary brands. They don't see the pedigree. They see the messaging, the engagement, and of course, the responsibility that the brand comes. They're outspoken, they speak their minds, and they expect brands to do the same. How true is this for this generation?
So I think, again, if you go more on the emotional side of things, and again, that's my vantage point to see Gen Z, millennials, right? Because I'm a little older. So I think the way I see it is that over a period of time, and I know it's a little politically incorrect, it's gone more relationship-based to transaction-based, even in relationships to a huge extent, right? You see that the transaction has started to happen a lot more than the way it was consumed earlier, right? I mean, so if you interpersonal also, you see, it's changed a lot, and I think human behaviors are very similar, right? So the way you treat humans is also the way you treat brands if a brand has done its job well, right? So I think that's a very standard trait that you'll see across the board. Now, is sustainability an important aspect? I think that was one question. Absolutely, I think. And I think post-COVID, a lot of that has happened. It's very cool also, frankly, to be sustainable. And I think, again, I'm just being very, very blatant about it. Right?
Can be no filter.
Yeah.
Yes,
So, I mean,
please.
there's no sugarcoating it. And since it is cool, and I think it's a very good idea because whatever is cool kind of gets, absorbed and consumed better. So I think because sustainability is something which people have started to respect a lot more, and people who respect it get more respect, I think that is something which is helping a lot to get the story out. Whether sustainability will help create a great brand, yes. Whether the Gen Z person or the person who's buying that brand is buying only for sustainability, the answer is unfortunately no. Otherwise, fast fashion would not have survived. So there is a conundrum there, unfortunately. So there is consumption happening, which is very. So what you respect and what you end up consuming, there is a little bit of disconnect even today. But I think over a period, but the direction is right. We are all in the right direction. We are expecting the right things now, and the brands are taking note that the right things are getting respected. So over a period of time, it will streamline. But I think right now we're in that conflicting place where we love one thing and we buy another in some ways, right? Of course, there are certain brands which are doing phenomenally well because they believe in X and people buy them for that X, right? And we have so many examples, right, out there. But yeah, I think it's a journey that we are on, and I think that it's a beautiful journey. That's the good news.
Anshita, how important is the story side as far as appealing to Gen Z is concerned, and the sustainability? Do they really look at those things, or is cost the final thing, cost and quality?
I mean, I would love to say that people care about sustainability, but I'll be very honest, they don't. At the end of the day, when you're a consumer and you have some X amount of money you want to spend, today people know that if they go to a third marketplace or a fourth marketplace, उन्हें 40% off भी मिल जाएगा. So then why will they purchase it from you? They don't care that you're using X and Y because that sustainability thing catches them for 2 seconds. Again, I'm playing on the seconds factor because it genuinely does matter. Brands that use hooks very, very well to capture consumers will always win, especially, and I'm talking from more of an online perspective. I think offline, maybe sustainability can matter, maybe people look at it, but I don't think consumers have gotten that far. We're very behind right now, especially in India.
But I think human behavior is channel agnostic. So I think if you see it in online, you will see it offline as well.
No, so it's probably the same offline. And in terms of brand story, of course it matters because the story sticks with you, right? The story kind of becomes your story. If you can connect your personal story to the brand story, you're more likely to stick with them for a little bit longer. For example, Clovia, I think what they've done with lingerie is speak to every woman ever who has a hard time finding a bra and didn't want to go to a store to purchase one because it's embarrassing. But they made it easier. And I mean, in terms of us, hair care, people with curly hair feel so unseen. Now, because of our brand, they feel seen. So again, see, these are stories that connect back to the consumer. And if you can do that successfully, I think that matters more.
People with curly hair will get a chance to ask questions.
I know.
Phaneesh, you have a strange responsibility also. For example, there's a brand and there's a consumer, and the brand has all their own time, everything is set, but brand experience will also depend on you. You are an stakeholder. Unknowingly, you become a very strong stakeholder in this entire piece. And then you have limitations. The traffic is not under your control. The infrastructure is very different. Do you feel, I mean, when people comment on the brand because of the delivery, because of the larger aspects, how do you negotiate with that feedback if it's negative, and it's not your fault?
True. I mean, a lot of times what happens is that we are an extension of the brand. We are the face of the brand, when
experience of the brand.
The experience, everything. I mean, we represent the brand, especially the online ones, because you can say that for a retail store, there are people who are there, who are the sales reps and all, who become the face of the brand. But here, when you talk about a complete e-commerce kind of an activity where we are delivering, even though the amount of interaction is very less, it's as small as picking up the parcel from him, but a lot goes into how we deliver, how we are able to bridge the expectation that the brand has set with the customer to what is being done now. And it is interesting that you asked that, because there has been a correction of sorts. Nobody is able to deliver, again, going back to quick commerce, nobody is able to bridge that kind of an expectation gap. And it is largely a hole that brands have dug into themselves, because Pankaj mentioned that it is more towards the capability. How fast are you able to get the products ready for dispatch? It's the amount of time that goes into just the delivery bit is very less, because how easily, best you can position yourself closest to the customer makes a lot of difference. So a lot of discussions, I guess, one of the earlier panels was also on the topic of enabling omni-channel. A lot of importance still goes into having a good tech stack to solve for that omni-channel presence. If, let's say, all of the retail stores are well enabled, all the inventory is correctly matched. So a lot of times what happens is that what is appearing in the inventory list is not what is there on the shelf. So a lot of times there is that mismatch that happens. When that happens, and then you commit to a customer that yes, a delivery will happen from the nearest store, but that particular SKU is not there in that store, that's when the dichotomy takes place. So, to answer your question, it is indeed important that we have and we adhere to those sort of SLAs, but it is also important from, let's say a brand point of view to enable us to also do that.
Mayank, when it comes to legacy brands, brands before, the Gen Z, existing before the Gen Z, are they worried about addressing, and are they taking enough measures to address the Gen Z market? Are they looking within that we need to change our behavior, our staff needs to be retrained, readjusted to the current demands? Is that happening with legacy brands?
We are India's oldest retailer, so I'm the 5th generation in the business. So, but Gen Z is what is happening now. But every generation, the customer behavior will actually change. So I think there is almost an overemphasis when the millennials came. There was so much of focus on what millennials would want. The whole shopping experience and the product offering would change completely. It changed to a bit, but it was not a 180-degree transformation. I don't believe that with Gen Z it would be a 180-degree transformation either. In the end, what any customer is wanting is a good product. The good product, good service. There is no actual substitute for good service. When customers come in to us, because the whole family is coming in, because we are largely into ceremonial wear. So, we have 3 generations, 4 generations coming into our stores at the same time. So what they're looking for is, very good service more than anything else.
So trust is a habit.
Trust is a habit, and even small things like because we are primarily into offline, we have a presence online. A small percentage of our business is online, but we're primarily into offline. So when customer comes, whether the customer is say 13 years old or 30-year-old or 50 years old, they want to be treated well. So if a small thing like asking for water, asking for tea and coffee, which almost sound old school, but these small things would actually make a big difference in customer loyalty and getting the repeat customer into our stores.
Yes.
And talking about sustainability, again, I think it's a very novel concept. I think probably I would say to our clientele, about 5% of our clientele would actually, currently would actually make their purchase decision based on whether we have a sustainable collection. I recently got a dressing down from one of our, family friends who's been coming to us for generations. So he's, for the first time I remember, he actually did not buy from us. He bought from someone else just because, he liked what he was trying, but he realized that that particular garment was not sustainable. And he's Gen Z. So that is starting to happen, and it drove us to change. We are developing that collection, but still, it's a small segment of our current clientele.
Right. Well, absolutely. I think sometimes you feel that things have been jargonized. There's a lot of there are so many jargons around it that even old school, like making customer feel special. I think that will always remain relevant no matter what generation. I want to start with you, Akshita. Where is Gen Z found? Which platform? Which planet and which platform?
I think for most brands today, if you want to find Gen Z, it's on Instagram, it's on TikTok. See, TikTok's not in India, but people still use it with VPNs. Brands are still using it. If you want to find Gen Z, obviously Reels will be the first place. If you can make a good Reel, you've probably reached them. But there's YouTube. That's a longer format content, basically. But I think...
Which one is most effective? Your 3 top places to get Gen Z hit and get those 5 seconds. I hope they don't become 2 seconds next year.
I hope not. But so definitely Reels, definitely like any collaborations that you do, brand to brand collaborations will call Gen Z very well. And then I think not YouTube. I wouldn't say Facebook. Facebook is dead now. So I think YouTube is going to be the next place because YouTube has launched something called Shorts. So Shorts and Reels are basically the same. So what's happening is that the TikTok craze is going to come to India. It still has not come because still today trends are being copied from TikTok and being pulled onto Reels. But what's going to happen is that we're going to have to make our own. And I still think we're a few years behind in terms of that.
Pankaj?
I think, again, going back, if you look at consumption, how it has changed from content perspective, right? It was text, then it was images, and now it's videos, right? So I think that's how you will see the evolution of the customer base also. So today it's all video, right? Even for commerce, I think live commerce is another thing, which is about to go very big in India. It still hasn't, right? So I think for us, it's the, so the Gen Z has already answered. So if I say something else, I'm anyways going to look stupid. So, right? So I think it's for sure, Instagram. One more place which my team has been very constantly evaluating, and I like an idiot because I don't use it. It's Snap, right? I think Snapchat is something which a lot of people are hanging out, and now we've started to do some experimentation there. So there's some juice. But yeah, predominantly that. Twitter, etc. I mean, for example, as brands, it doesn't work. It's very, very, it's too polarized. It's not cool. It's not fun. It's too acute.
I think you have to have very strong opinions on Twitter to stand out as a brand.
I think you have to take a stand.
No, I think you have to take a step back and say, who are you as a brand, and do you actually resonate being taking a position? Our brand is happiness, right? Happy is my superpower is our tagline. So, if I go and say happy is my superpower on Twitter, people will say like whatever, So that's the thing, right? Yeah.
Funny, slightly, I know you guys don't make reels, right?
We do. We do.
Okay,
We do.
lovely. I have to watch those. I'm so sorry. So how does that impact the brand positioning, business? I mean, and where do you target it mostly? Are you also Reel first? Or are you Twitter first? Facebook first?
No, largely it's reel first, and we have started, and it's been almost 6 months since we have been bringing out reels, and largely it is, I mean, the way Pankaj mentioned that happiness is the tagline for us. It's anything, anywhere, anytime. So that's the kind of a mantra that we are taking. Largely, it is like putting the onus that if you are not able to get something, then why don't you get it yourself? So that's the empowerment that we are looking at.
Right. So for you, Mayank, is it, I mean, necessary for legacy brands who have dedicated customers? I mean, you don't have to really worry about that, to actually get into reels and get someone dance and do something, or it's really not something that impacts your positioning and the customer ROI?
It is important because, not many people in India get remarried. So I need new customers. So then I need need to attract new generations. But again, this is, we treat it as, one part of our strategy. We are still, we still do print, we still do
traditional, yeah.
Traditional, and also not increasingly in the last couple of years, we are focusing on digital, and Reels is definitely one part of it. So it helps drive engagement on Insta, on FB, on other platforms. How much is it actually impacting our sales is honestly an open question that I or my team hasn't been able to answer yet.
Right. So I have 8 minutes, and I want to bring in one question from the audience here before I go on to my next two. Anyone? Yeah, please. Yeah.
Hi. So, like, we were just talking about legacy brands and the Gen Z brands. So, I think, but it's what the panel discussion here is the Gen Z consumers. Brands, of course, whether it's a new brand or it's a legacy brand, cannot survive by just catering to a segment, I feel. Of course, you need to specialize, but you have to ultimately cater to a larger spectrum of audience. And as far as I'm taking the liberty to speak on behalf of Mohanlal Sons, he's my husband. So, as far as even at Mohanlal Sons, I mean, we wouldn't be surviving if it wasn't the Gen Z consumer, because if it's whoever's getting married, it's today's generation. So, and they come with their own ideas, and for that, there's some element of tangibility required. It also depends on the segment that you are into, because you will not just go buy a Sherwani or a Indo-Western, online. You might, but you definitely need that tangible factor.
I think it's the Gen Z now which is getting married, so of course, you will have to factor in their likes and dislikes. Pankaj, so your three suggestions. How can brands step up their game to win over Gen Z consumers and get their attention and loyalty?
I think one most important is don't try to be somebody else and customize for them. I think they catch faff, they catch fraud very fast, right? So if you try to be somebody just to woo them, you'll be the first ones to be kicked out, right? I think so even if you're not for them, you tell them that I'm not for you and this is who I am. They
might like you that way.
They might like you, and they might as well start consuming you. So I think that's one thing that I respect about this new generation a lot, is that they are very, very, they catch bullshit very fast. Their bullshit meter is like up there, right? So I think that's one thing that
highly developed.
Highly developed, and maybe our generation has trained them to be that now because probably we bullshitted way too much. But I think that's one very, very critical thing. Other is you got to be fast to as we were saying that earlier we used to. Earlier the customer used to keep the brand on its toes. Now the customer keeps the brand on their thumbs, literally, right? So now the way it has happened is that we have a very short span, and we've talked about that short span so much. But just trying to squeeze your brand into that short span again, do not shortchange your brand, because that again goes back to point number one. Then again you'll start bullshitting. So I think be true to whoever you are. if you cannot talk about who you are in 5 seconds, please talk about it in 30 seconds. It's fine. If you're good enough, message is strong enough, they'll listen. And third is please, for God's sake, do not try to educate, right? My entire business is about educating, about, education for the customer is a very big deal, tier 2, tier 3 brand. So, the focus was always tier 2, tier 3, 62% is tier 2, tier 3. And we were about size, we were about everything. And the first thing that we said was, education is boring, and people don't like boring anymore. So we thought that even if we have to tell the most boring thing, we'll tell it in the most fun way, because that's the only way people will consume now. So I think that's the third and most important thing. Please do not.
And
be
I think
boring.
in your case, it's also a mindset shift that is required, and that too in tier 2 and tier 3 cities.
Yeah, and if I start giving a bhashan around it, people will throw me out. But if I start, talking it today. So we launched our first television commercial. The first time a Bollywood celebrity is doing mainstream, and God knows how hard we tried to make that happen, right? Because kisi ka mummy will not agree, kisi ka papa will not agree, right? That's how this category is. But now I think, and thanks to Shraddha, that she's kind of taken that mantle and said that I'm going to make this a household thing, talking about lingerie. I think that is something there also, we've said that we will not educate. We'll say, yeah, if you wear the right thing, it will make you happy all day long. You just stay happy. And I think then you will start understanding that wearing the right thing is important. So the message has to be an undercurrent and not the main
Not
thing.
a preachy one. Let me go to the Gen Z herself. Anshita, how do you win over Gen Z consumers and keep them really engaged?
See, I think keep your story consistent. That's it. Whether it's in a 5-second reel, or like he said, a 30-second video, or a YouTube video, or you have stores, suddenly you're opening stores. In our case, maybe someday we open a salon. The story has to stay consistent, because people need brand recall no matter how old or young they are. And no matter what changes, brand recall will always be the most important thing. So if you see somebody's logo, or if you see their color scheme, or you see something, okay, this is that brand that I purchased and I like it. Or maybe you don't want to purchase it, but you still know the brand. And that is the point, because sales will go up and down. Customers will choose to come back, or maybe they won't. I think it's very evident now. Nobody knows how to keep a customer sticky. It's very difficult today. You have to be a legacy brand to have some. But since we're not legacy brands, we're 3 years old, we have to just keep adapting. But I think as long as your story is the same, no matter how you're adapting, I don't think you should fail. Like, you'll fall, but you won't fail. So.
Funny what Pankaj said, that you need to be yourself. If you're not fitting or not convincing your customers in 5 seconds, you don't have to follow the trend. But is it easier to do? I mean, easier said than done? I mean, how do you follow that this platform suits you or does not suit you?
Well, largely, what I have at least seen is that we have seen that consistency breeds competence, and competence breeds return customers. Yeah. So that's what. So one of the aspect was about retention as well. So if we are not able to, I mean, since despite being a delivery only company, you're not making tall claims of getting things delivered within 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever. We know what is there, what are the pitfalls that are involved. And we just say that, we will do we'll do delivery. The tagline of our brand is delivery hai ho jayega, whereas the ethos is anything, anywhere, anytime. But largely being consistent helps us in cementing that view that yes, it is indeed these guys mean business. So that's what.
Finally, your take on this, Mayank. Ways to address Gen Z, and overall, I mean, how do you build a lasting brand, because they are younger brands compared to yours. Maybe you can also add that bit to it.
It's not much different, you need a great story, whether it's legacy, whether it's, any way of engaging with the customer. A great story will get the customer in. Even my legacy can only get the customer into the store. But once the customer is there, it is the quality of the product and the sales service and the after sales service that will get me the repeat customer. So it has to be a great product as well. I mean, the biggest, so I forget who said that. If it's a bad product, a great story will just help it fail faster.
Wonderful line. I mean, what a way. to end this panel. But thank you everyone for sharing. And now we know where to find Gen Zs and what to do and what not to do. Someone wants to ask a question? Okay, please allow me 30 seconds. But make it faster, please. Yeah. Yeah, please do. Go ahead. Yeah.
So I belong to the same fraternity. My question is, there is a lot of variation between the mindset of Gen Z people and the millennials. So Gen Z, they are about the physical fitness, and when we talk about the millennial people, they are about their mental fitness. So how we can
Okay. Who will take this?
when it comes to the royalty and retention?
Okay.
I think it's again, what do you do as a brand? I think is something which is consistent, and then how do you communicate to different sections is something that technology can help you with, right? For example, we do activewear and we do fashion bras and we do some very basic bras, right? So we have segments of people where we are pushing more activewear. We have segments of people where we are saying this is more fashion stuff for you. Consumptions of Gen Z will also be different for the same product, right? So they'll buy cheaper, they'll buy a lot more as compared to probably somebody who'll buy more expensive product but lesser. So, earlier in India, the consumption of bras would be like probably 5 bras a year a woman would buy, best case scenario, right? Today, for Gen Z, it's 10 to 12 bras a year, and probably it's increasing only. So I think that's the kind of changes that we'll see, but I think it will be a function of how do you communicate your story differently to different sections, because you can segment it now, which earlier wasn't possible.
Right. So sorry, I can see Aditya here coming and, giving us a cue. But thank you so much for sharing and breaking some myths that it's not just the sustainability that Gen Zs look at, which often is repeated outside. I wish we will have definitely more conversations on this, but thank you all for your time. Thank you.